a singing voice. Everyone has got it, but how you make it yours is what's really important. Hey, what is up, guys? Welcome to Minds Behind the Music. I am your host, LA. Today's topic is another segment of maintaining your voice/range, but instead of a lesson, it's more of a discussion. I will give you a couple tips here and there during this, but more so, it's me talking about the topic. Now, this topic in particular has to do with this. I'll give you an example first. Freddie Mercury, Sebastian Bach, Steven Tyler, Michael Jackson, Stevie Wonder, Bruno Mars, Sam Smith, Ed Sheeran. What do all of these singers have in common? When you hear their music and you hear them singing, you can tell it's them. It's their voice. They're singing. You could hear Freddie Mercury. You hear Queen's music. You hear Freddie Mercury. That's his sound. That's his voice. You hear Steve Perry and Journey singing "Don't Stop Believing." That's Steve Perry. That's instantly Steve Perry. That's not anyone else. That's not what he was influenced by. That's Steve Perry. And even artists of today like Sam Smith, Bruno Mars, Ed Sheeran, Louis Capaldi, the list goes on. Why I'm talking about this is this type of lesson or piece of information or advice that goes on, it's not talked about enough. And this is something that I always hear from I'm even guilty of this mistake as well. It's like not thinking about what I sound like. What is my voice? What is the sound of my music, the vocal sound of my music? And that's what I want to ask you guys. What is the vocal sound of your music? That's one of the most important aspects to, you as an artist and you as a singer. You shouldn't focus on, what song. I get that, I love covering songs and everyone loves covering songs, but when you cover a song, you shouldn't think immediately the artist, the original artist that sang it, or the version of said artist that you're, covering like. You have to think, how am I going to sound like on this song? What is my voice? And that's one of the things to start off. What is your timbre? That's a piece of advice that I brought up in a previous segment. What is your timbre? What is, what are you doing to warm up? What do you sound like? What is your voice type? Are you a tenor? Are you a baritone? Are you an alto, soprano, mezzo soprano? Are you a bass? Like, all of these pieces of information are very vital to shaping your sound. For one pointer that I can give you is go to any expert, talk to any friends you have that are experts in singing, see how they can have them give a listen to you and see what advice they give you. See, maybe they'll tell you, hey, do this differently when you're hitting this note, sound like this, or open up your mouth a little more on this part of the song. And they'll give you different pieces of advice. And when you take those to consideration, go back, record yourself singing, like record yourself doing the song. Go back and hear what you're doing, like hear what you sound like, hear what you're doing specifically in the song, and look back and see what do you sound like. Better yet, go do this when you're singing a song. That's one of the most common ways to hear your own voice is to do this. Put the side of you see that this part of your ear, do this while you're singing, and you'll have a better idea of what your voice sounds like while you are, covering a song, while you're singing. That's a pretty common way to, hear your own voice. And before I get into any other pieces of advice, I want to play a video for you guys on actually what inspired me to come up with this segment. Let me see. Right, there we go. That's it. It's an interview that Sebastian Bach did. Shout out to the great Sebastian Bach for this piece of advice that inspired this topic. Let me see what I'm going to share the screen right here. Share sound. And this is the piece of advice that Sebastian Bach has. Let's hear what he has to say.
That's a great question. I started in the church choir when I was 8 years old. So that's what got me into singing before rock and roll. But I have to answer your question with the answer of John Bon Jovi, okay? Because he helped out Skid Row on our first album. He took us on the New Jersey tour. That's how we made it. And when I first joined the band, he goes, Sebastian, sometimes you sing, you sound like Vince Neil. Sometimes you sound like Rob Halford. Sometimes you sound like Dio. Sometimes you sound like Gene Simmons. And I go, I need to hear Sebastian. And this was like in the months we were writing the first album and then recording it. And the onus on the performer back then was to have your completely identifiable own sound. Now, that's not, now it's like you sound like somebody else and that's gonna help you. Back then, Steven Tyler sounded like Steve Tyler, Robert Plant sounded like Robert Plant. You could hear one word and you know who's singing. So that, when you said your own voice, people don't talk about that now.
And he's right. No one really talks about that. No one really says, what do you sound like? Because that's something that really doesn't get talked about a lot in the industry or when it comes to music. Like, yeah, there are a lot of singers with their own unique individual voices that I've mentioned, like Bruno Mars, Sam Smith, Ed Sheeran, Shawn Mendes. All of their voices, that's their own, and Justin Bieber, like all of their voices, that's definitely their own. But nowadays people don't think I gotta sound like me. I gotta sound like what I need to really figure out what I sound like, find out my sound, because that's really what will help you stand out even more to other musicians. Like your vocal sound. I'm not trying to disparage music of today and say that older music is better, like all that boomer nonsense. But nowadays, you don't hear people saying, I want to hear your voice. I want to hear you. There are a couple exceptions nowadays, because I would say watch American Idol. I've watched some episodes of American Idol, the recent seasons of American Idol, and a lot of the judges over there actually encourage the artists to have their own spin and be more unique, be more like them, have their own voice. And that needs to be preached more, because that's how people will truly get far as singers and songwriters and just musicians in general, is just finding your own voice. Like I said, it's a great thing to have influences, but make sure that that's not the only reason why you sound the way you do. You have to put in some of that elbow grease and figure out your sound. For, like I said, talk to any other friends of yours that you have that are also singers, that also do music, and talk to anyone else that, talk to experts. If you have voice lessons, I'm sure that if anyone's taking voice lessons for professionals, they'll tell you, like, hey, I want to hear you. What do you sound like? They'll give you the precise advice on how to shape your own voice. I remember when I got out of high school, I was still trying to figure out my singing voice. It took me until now to really figure out my singing voice and figure out, where I want to be vocally. And that's definitely a long road. Like I said, there's so many things you could do. Record yourself a cappella. I know that it's, a little bit of an insecure thing where people don't like hearing their own voice. I hate hearing my own voice when it comes to singing. Just check, record yourself singing a cappella. Sing a verse. It doesn't have to be an entire song. Just sing a verse of something. Sing a chorus. Sing just like a little line or something. See how you sound. See what you want to do differently that you think, if you don't like how you sound with what you're doing on one part of that, see what you can do differently, and see, see how you can improve yourself to make sure you're adding your own spin. I'm still in that learning process. In all honesty, I'd be lying if I told you I was fully confident and I like knew what I sounded like and knew what I wanted to sound like. I would be lying to you. I'm still trying to figure out my voice. I'm still in that process. I mean, I just started with my bands, so it's still in the early stages. So believe me when I say it's definitely a challenge, and it's definitely a long process finding your own voice. But all you got to do is do that work and find any way you can into shaping your own sound and finding your voice. And I'll leave it with that. Guys, like, comment, share, and subscribe if you want to see videos similar to this one. Any updates regarding the podcast, I'll put that down below. Instagram at LA Perez Works. If you want to, and if you're feeling generous for towards the podcast, put Cash App $Louis ATM 929. That's the place where you want to go for any, if you're feeling generous and want to donate. Anything you guys send here will go back to the podcast. So definitely every little bit helps. Guys, I hope you have a good rest of your week and a happy Mother's Day. Definitely spend all the time you can with your mamas. And I will see you guys soon. Stay tuned and have a good one.